All right. Uproar breaking inside the MAGA world over H-1B visas and foreign workers, ladies and gentlemen. We're diving right into it. As you guys know, I covered this extensively yesterday, but we must cover it even further because the MAGA world has already seen its own share of political drama.
Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are both facing major blowback from their own supporters for not only backing, but encouraging offering more visas to highly skilled foreign workers. Over the Christmas holiday, Musk posted this online saying, "Think of this like a pro sports team. If you want your team to win the championship, you need to recruit top talent wherever they may be." He later added, "I'm referring to bringing in, via legal immigration, the top 0.1% of engineering talent as being essential for America to keep winning."
So the reality of the matter is, I don't have an issue with H-1B visa programs. I don't have an issue with migration at all. Migration is what has kept America so dominant. The problem with how migration is done, however, or the major reasons as to why people like Elon Musk like immigration in general, is because it creates an alternative secondary labor market that is reliant on maintaining their job. Because under normal circumstances, if you're a regular American, right, you have a couple pressures that keep you at your shitty job. Those pressures are the fact that you don't have health care if you lose your job. That's number one. So if you're a regular American citizen, you go to school, you go to college, you take on major student loans. You're taking on a shit ton of debt just to be able to become a more productive, more valuable worker. And in the end of that process, now you have to pay off those loans. So there are a couple different external pressures that keep you at your shit end job. A job that your educational attainment does not require you to take on in normal circumstances, but now you're desperate. Obviously, one of those reasons is how expensive college is and all the student loans that you have to take in order to even go there. That traps you. The second reason, that is perhaps the more significant reason, the more important reason, is that if you leave your job, you don't have health care because your health care is tied to your job. But for our endlessly parasitic, capital-owning class, that level of exploitation is not enough. As profit rates have a tendency to decline, our capital owners look to the more malleable aspects of commodity production, which is always going to be the labor force. That's not enough, so they either A, move manufacturing overseas to a developing nation in an effort to draw out higher profit margins in general, even though that is a logistical nightmare overall. It still is infinitely cheaper at the end of the day for people who want to produce goods at the as cheaply as possible. Another thing that they also do is take advantage of migrant workers. H-1B visas are supposed to be for these incredibly talented workers that are highly skilled and have gotten they've gotten all this education. And it's understandable that we have this mentality towards the brain drain. It's what has kept America competitive. It helps improve scientific research in the country. There are many different benefits for the H-1B visa program. The problem, or rather not the problem, but the additional benefit, the real benefit for the likes of Elon Musk, however, is that outside of the two pressure factors that I've mentioned for documented American laborers, there's a third component that is even more consequential. It opens up a new avenue of exploitation because migrant workers, obviously due to the currency exchange, are always going to, if they want to bring money back to their home nations, they're going to be more willing to take a pay cut. That's number one. But number two, perhaps more consequential, is that if they lose their jobs, they don't just lose healthcare, they get fucking deported. And this is precisely the reason why Elon Musk and many other billionaires love the H-1B visa program. Because this way, you get to bring in a migrant worker that is competent, that is well-educated, that will work for much cheaper than the American worker, and is also tremendously leveraged in the eyes of, or rather, Elon Musk has tremendous leverage over the likes of an H-1B worker And therefore, that H-1B worker is endlessly exploitable, much more exploitable than even the documented U.S. citizen laborer. Now, the solution to this problem is to ensure that there is a normalization and a proper processing to ensure that you can't actually depress wages for H-1B workers and keep the wages in the marketplace even. This, of course, is considered socialism or some kind of like price enforcement, some kind of wage enforcement, which is not even a part of the conversation. Not a single person will allow that to happen. And that is precisely why we have arrived at this major problem for a lot of Americans who are like, well, I want to get a job, especially in the tech sector where there's been hundreds of thousands of layoffs. What the is going on? Elon Musk is still trying to fill these roles with migrant workers rather than American laborers. And therein lies the major issue. Therein lies the major problem. Now, I obviously have been gloating a little bit on the timeline over this process because I think it's very funny. A couple things I want to point out. Racist people are so funny. They thought the billionaire man doesn't just want cheaper labor, just like they foolishly think they're superior to a dude born into abject poverty just because the dude is brown. There's an air of entitlement and superiority that a lot of Americans feel over the rest of the world because of American empire. They think like they did it. You didn't do it. You're just a beneficiary of it to a certain degree, and you're not even a good enough beneficiary of it because all the death and destruction that we subjugate the developing nations to do not even come back bountiful to the American society, to the average American labor aristocrat. That's what's so funny about it, is that part of the reason why our GDP is so high is because there are so many expensive middle managers in every process. For-profit healthcare is one of the best glaringly obvious examples of this. There is no real service that they're providing, and it should not exist. It's a concept that literally only churns profit for people. That's it. It's a money-making operation. It doesn't have any real service. It doesn't offer anything. Like, that's not a real concept at all. We just made up an entire industry specifically designed make things more costly, and they certainly do make things more costly, and it makes a lot of money for people who are shareholders. And we've basically done this with every industry. So the second tweet I had, which apparently a lot of right-wingers agreed with, which I thought was strange, is the elites destroyed schooling in this country for profit. They treat teachers like dirt. Kids get shot in school. Then they tell you college is not important and it can't be free. And now you're sitting around mad about H-1B visas. Lamau, you've been robbed blind. Ashley St. Clair said, never thought I'd see the day where I agree with Hasan. A bunch of right-wingers saw this tweet and were like, oh my God, I agree, which is interesting. I guess when you frame it with elites rather than capital-owning bourgeois or whatever, oh my God, you're becoming jank. Yeah, totally. This means I agree with right-wingers and not vice versa. I think I'm on the opposite side of that spectrum, where right-wingers are agreeing with me. I'm not agreeing with right-wingers. I am noticing contradictions that other people are also noticing and using that to describe my worldview in a way that people can comprehend. That is the major difference here. Isn't this their argument for school choice? The elites destroyed schooling in this country for profit is literally a argument against school choice. If I didn't know you, I would have assumed you were right-wing just by the use of the word elites. Elites here is obviously a substitute for capital owners, not like, Jews or I don't know, woke they them baristas. Okay, like the actual elites, the actual people who are in control of capitalist society, capital owners. Just so you understand. I mean, everyone here understands it, and the point still stands. The point remains. The elites destroyed schooling in this country for profits. It is true. Part of that is school choice, voucher programs, and rampant privatization. The truth is that rampant privatization has absolutely gutted and destroyed American public education, and that is a major component as to why American laborers are no longer competitive in the global market. And there are two ways out of this. Either you try to engage in isolationist policies, or you rapidly improve the educational infrastructure in this country and make it as egalitarian as possible in order to yield the best possible results. Because you don't fucking know what people's ceilings are. This is part of the problem with racist sentiment. There are many issues with white supremacist attitudes, but this is a major problem. You have no idea what a kid growing up in Southside Chicago, what their potential actually looks like. When you rob them of that potential ahead of time, you'll never know. That's it. And in that process, because we're trying to eke out profits from every corner, from every sector possible, we actually end up making our labor force less competitive in the global marketplace. And that's why, inevitably, countries like China will thrive in this marketplace because they don't fuck around with education. This is why it's always hilarious when Donald Trump, in the same conversation, will say something along the lines of abolishing the Department of Education. And in the same breath, without a shred of irony, will turn around and say, look at Norway and Chinese education. It's so much better than us. I wonder why. Perhaps it's because they understand the importance of education across the board. So there's two ways out of it, which is to endlessly engage in profit seeking while simultaneously push harder and harder, engage in more isolationism, and continue rampant exploitation, and refuse to educate your broader populace and become dumber as a society. A dumber society is easily controlled, easily manipulated, so it still benefits the capital owners in general as they rely on better educated migrant workers that are more exploitable. Or you can continue migration while also simultaneously ensuring that every American gets the proper education all the way up to the college level, make college education free in general, and stop listening to dumbass elites like Elon Musk who take advantage of that division in American society to sell you a lie. I am reminded of the Vivek Ramaswamy moment where he wore that Texas jacket and the big cowboy hat. Let me see if I can find it. This is all it takes for many dumbass Americans. All it takes is for a guy like this, who is a hedge fund pharma bro, who is one of the major villains of American society that has robbed regular Americans blind. All it takes is for this dude to put the Texas jacket on, put a big ass cowboy hat on, and go, I don't like trans people. I think trans people are robbing you blind. I don't like them Mexicans. And then everybody goes, you're right. You're right, King. American history is riddled with people like this. One of the greatest examples is Ronald Reagan, who was literally an actor. This is precisely the Ronald Reagan method. Fake populist bullshit. Make Americans divided, make them focus on racial boundaries that don't disrupt the capitalist pecking order, and you can rob them blind. Vivek Ramaswamy set us Indian Americans back 2 decades by doing this bootlicker shit. Yeah, it's also kind of funny because as far as like the right-wing BJP Indian Twitter, they're still blaming other Indians, not a shock, who happen to be leftist. So that is also hilarious because the metric ton of racism is not coming from other Indians who happen to be of a lower caste or happen to be leftist. The metric ton of racism is coming from white people in general who literally just despise Indians and don't care. Don't make the don't distinguish between like the good kind and the bad kind. Okay, that's not a real concept. There's never been a real concept. That will never be a real concept. That's not a thing that racists do. It turns out racists don't actually distinguish between non-white people all that much. They just say, oh, you're non-white and therefore you're lesser. What do you have to say about societies that have arguably surpassed America, particularly China, that have huge emphasis on STEM and like zero humanities majors compared to America? That's wrong. The idea that like there is no humanities majors in China is objectively incorrect. Countries like China quite literally fund art programs. They fund humanities all the time. They don't just fund humanities, they fund art programs in general. It's not, what you're saying is not correct about China, nor was it correct about the USSR, for example. It's so funny to say that like there isn't robust literature and robust art in a nation as large as China. A lot of the big tech companies right now are losing a lot of talent to private equity / hedge funds. I know developers who are in their late 20s that are making $225K a year plus 50 to 75K source firm or hedge fund developer who got the fuck out. I make less now, but at least I'm not selling my soul. Yeah, here, I'll just say it like this, okay? I have obviously personal experience with this, not from my own immediate experience in the workforce, but let's just say I know someone who is very close to me who is highly educated and builds spaceships for a living. And what I have seen in terms of workplace treatment, in terms of job prospects, in terms of what that specific sector looks like, you would be shocked. I was certainly shocked when I saw how incredibly dire the situation is. And I talked about this yesterday as well. Every sector in the United States of America, including like what was formerly known as the golden bracelet sectors, like engineering, maybe lawyering, being a doctor. Engineering was supposed to be part of that process. Nowadays, even engineering is basically relegated to the passion that you have for building certain things, because it's certainly not about the money. If you're an engineer and you want to make money, you got to go into finance. The only sector that you can make money in is finance, okay? It's business and finance. That's it. And that's precisely why so many people that have, no matter what their background is, go into that sector. So if you understand the motivational capacity that wages have, your salary has, then you can understand how to fix this problem. Are you saying doctors don't make good money? No, I'm saying engineers don't make as much good money as they used to. It all still comes back to wages. If you want to positively incentivize people into going to certain sectors that need extra hand, you have to ensure that wages are higher and that sector is still capable of recruiting the top level talent. But we have a negative incentivization structure in the United States of America, where basically we make it so that the bottom is endless, and therefore you're constantly competing with the entire globe, with the labor force of the entire globe, where your starting position is worse off in general too, despite the fact that you're in the wealthiest nation on the fucking planet. You're in the wealthiest nation on the planet, a nation that has seen a 14% increase in homelessness this past year. Think about that. 700,000 people are sleeping outside tonight. Insane. On top of that, you have to take you're saddled with student loan debts that force you into jobs that you don't even want to take, despite your educational attainment. And people eat one another alive and yelling about how college is for the elites and it's gay and woke and that's the real problem and DEI is the real problem, or whatever. A number of different unnecessary and idiotic takes are flying around. Meanwhile, people like Elon Musk are robbing you blind. And this story in and of itself is fantastic for me, because I think it exposes how easily tricked many Americans are and how they utilize the racism button to gain favor and continue further division in American society as they continue their domination. They don't give a about anything other than making more money, okay? They only care about profits. It doesn't matter what happens to you.
Musk is being backed up by his partner in Trump's government efficiency initiative, Vivek Ramaswamy. He says it's a cultural issue that there aren't more competitive engineers in the U.S. Here's what he said online: a culture that celebrates the prom queen over the math Olympiad champ, or the job.
Like, this is so stupid. It's incredible. We're not venerating our nerds enough. Our culture doesn't venerate nerds. Yeah, that's the problem. Thank you, Vivek. I love that Vivek basically was like, yeah, I got no pussy when I was in high school, so now it's your fault. Also, it's not like Vivek is a fucking engineer. What does he produce? He hasn't done shit. He's a hedge fund guy. He is a pharma bro. He's a fucking Silicon Valley tech guy. Him, JD Vance, Elon Musk even. Elon Musk is at least like visibly autistic as fuck, so people assume that he's like some kind of engineering savant when he's not. He has one patent. What the fuck has he done? He has one patent. All he does is hire the appropriate people and then, put them under horrific circumstances. These guys are all business majors LARPing like they're actually cooking up new inventions. It's all aesthetics. There actually was one guy in my high school who qualified for the U.S. International Math Olympiad team, but now works in a quant firm. It's so messed up that his talents are being focused to trade the stock market due to that being what capitalism... Exactly. I'm sure that dude could apply himself better in a public research capacity instead of churning out extra profits for capital owners who hire him. But that's where the big bag is. So why the fuck would you not go there? The only thing that stops you from going there is the genuine passion that you have. This is what I was talking about with respect to engineering. The only thing that keeps certain engineers continuously in the engineering side of things and not going to finance, where all the money is certainly not the job prospects. It's certainly not the comfortable salary that you get. It is your own pure passion. It is autism. It is the autistic interest that you have in building certain things. That's it. And some people go, all right, this, I need to make money. And then they go into finance anyway. There is so much talent in this world, from highly educated people all the way to people whose potential is robbed from them due to the unequal circumstances they were born into, where people could apply themselves to truly make revolutionary, groundbreaking, world-changing technology to improve people's lives in a dramatic capacity. And yet, all of that talent and all of that brain power is lost to the finance sector, because that's the only thing that makes money. That's the only thing that people care about. And as all these other sectors offer you very little pay, as the cost of living increases in these major cities that you have to get these jobs at, that's it. We're just cooking ourselves. We're cooking society.
A culture that venerates Corey from Boy Meets World, or Zach and Slater over Screech and Saved by the Bell, or Stefan over Steve Urkel and Family Matters will not produce the best engineers. But that argument is not going over well with Trump's MAGA base, certainly not online. Some of them saying, we did not ask them to engineer an immigration policy. Tech wants indentured servants, not high-skilled workers. You don't even know what MAGA immigration policy is.
And Coulter said, American workers can leave a company, imported H-1B workers can't. Tech wants indentured servants, not high-skilled workers. Yeah, it's not just tech, by the way. And Coulter, it certainly isn't just tech. Let me tell you, it's every sector. It's every sector. That's where undocumented migrants come in. You know, driving your Ubers, picking the crops. Who do you think is doing that? Building houses. Who is working in the kitchen? The problem is capitalism makes people more vicious and more self-interested, and causes people not to recognize that a lot of Americans, or a lot of people across the globe, have the exact same interests, the exact same class interests. So when those class dynamics are mystified consistently through the likes of identity politics and all these other different classifications that are applied to workers broadly, and the attitude developed within liberalism is this zero-sum game always. People go, why the fuck would you raise the wages for undocumented migrants? Fuck them. They should be deported. Not realizing that if there was at least some kind of legal safeguards for undocumented migrants, that they could be processed and become documented laborers in the American marketplace, in the American labor marketplace, where they could actually work alongside the documented U.S. labor force and unionize and demand higher wages and better workplace protections, it would genuinely improve all labor in this country. But as it stands, the way we operate, we have a constant depressive force on wages, an endless talent pool that refreshes through incredibly violent means such as deportation. Those guys are just the same as you. There is nothing different between an undocumented migrant and a documented U.S. laborer. There's no difference whatsoever. They're just trying to make a living in the exact same ways that you are trying to make a living. They're coming from dire circumstances in comparison to the average American worker. That much is true. But if there were universal workplace protections, they wouldn't be endlessly exploited in the same way. And therefore, they would not operate in a depressive capacity to the rest of the marketplace, the rest of the wage laborers. The system has created an endless bounty of treats that are at an affordable price point for the average American consumer. So on that front, that level of consumption has this dulling effect on the, I guess, labor aristocracy in the United States of America. However, it has consistently not only depressed wages, where wages have not kept up with productivity, but also on top of that, it just ruins your life further and further, slowly but surely. All the big ticket items that you need, like a college education for upward social mobility, is now impossible to attain without taking on hundreds of thousands of dollars of student loans that will then trap you into jobs that you don't want to actually do, that you are overqualified for. But it doesn't matter, because what else is out there? Someone has to pay those student loan debts. So you take on these jobs in the service sector, even though you're supposed to be doing something different. And it ties you into that job. Not only are you saddled with death, but you're tied to that job because there's no other way for you to get health care. China spends 7 trillion yuan, about 1 trillion USD on education, more than double what they spend on defense, more than what the US spends on defense. University is basically free even for the poorest villager. Yeah, we can't do that. That's too costly. And also, if education is free, who the f is going to go? If college is free, then why the fuck would you sign your soul to the Defense Department, to the Pentagon? Hello? If college is free, then you no longer have student loan debts that you have to pay off. Why the fuck would you take on? You would have far too much leverage to say no to certain jobs until those jobs actually pay well enough. That's it. That's the entire principle behind the way that our system is designed. It's negative incentives all the way down. Right wing has arrived at DEI by accident. What if I were to tell you that all matter of white identity politics is already white DEI? What if I were to tell you that all the racism that you see is literally white DEI? Everybody loves DEI. Listen to a bunch of the Musk Loomer space. It's so wild. It's so embarrassing. Musk says accurately and repeatedly. Loomer said she would escalate her complaint to Trump, and Musk asked her who she thought she was. You're not the people. You're a person. Let's get that straight. And an insane person at that. As someone here on H-1B, this discourse has made me really concerned about my situation. There's no other legal pathway to immigration without an H-1B. No, I know. Also, H-1Bs are not bad. It is good. It's a good structure on principle. It's a good structure in theory. I don't even care. It doesn't even need to be H-1B visas. I don't take issue with any sort of migration in general. I want to fucking document all of the laborers across the board that are working in American commodity production, because I understand that that is the only way to improve wages and benefits for all American workers. The problem is they don't want to do that, and American capital owners only want to utilize H-1B visa workers in a way to exploit them further, in a way that they can exploit them more than they can exploit the documented U.S. labor force, because there are multiple pressures on top of that.
But also I saw Mark Cuban, Mr. Mayor, responding to that saying, well, and I think we have what he had posted, quoting to Elon Musk and Vivek, saying, well, everyone, argue college is overrated. If you're arguing we need to have more homegrown engineers, don't we need more kids who are going to college? I mean, I think he's being a bit sarcastic there, but that is kind of the dual arguments that you...
I mean, that's it. That's it. You can't literally be like, college sucks and it's gay and woke and there should be no college. You shouldn't go to college. And then simultaneously be like, oh, what the f***? Why are there so many more better educated immigrant labor out there? Yeah, no shit, dude. Of course. You have literally systematically destroyed American education for years to turn profit, to make the broader populace more servile, easier to dominate, more malleable. You've made college so goddamn expensive that when American laborers want to be more productive and get education, higher education, you've made it impossible for them to do so without being saddled with thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. And then you're just shocked. Your argument doesn't make sense there. What do you mean? How does it not make sense? Education is consistently defunded and undermined in this country, driving a massive wedge between the quote unquote middle class, like working class, and capital owners. If you're from a wealthy background, you can go to an elite private school. It's very costly, but at least you get the top-notch education. Then from there on, you can go to a better college. If you're already wealthy, your parents probably went to a good college. Therefore, you have the one true affirmative action that everybody allows in this country, legacy admission. You're set up in a way where if you're wealthy, your next of kin will also have a massive, robust network. For poor people, for poor Americans, they do not get any of these benefits. They're cooked. And the quality of education that they get, if you're a part of the underclass, gets worse and worse year over year. What about POCs that are in higher education but are not getting those jobs? This is an issue that affects all Americans. Wait, what? I'm confused as to why you think this is like somehow opposing an argument that I have presented. I genuinely don't know what you're saying, unless you mean POCs as a person of capital. Is that what you're saying? Yeah, Laura Loomer, I can't believe I'm saying this, but Laura Loomer actually did bring up a good point where there's a lot of like entry level jobs that where Tesla and even SpaceX, I think, where Elon Musk relied on H-1B visa workers rather than American laborers. And we know what the real reason as to why he did that. The real reason as to why he did that is because, once again, H-1B visa workers are more easy to dominate. That's it. They have additional pressure on top of the regular pressures that the documented U.S. labor force has. They're more vulnerable. They have less leverage. They can be deported if they don't play ball, if they lose their jobs. It's all about finding the most vulnerable workers that you can dominate, because ultimately you want them to do the job of 2 workers, 3 workers, 4 workers. They're easier to exploit. Oh, okay, I think you're missing a point. I love you, Hasan, but I've listened to you too much for about 6 weeks, and I think you need to do a deeper dive into race. Yes, we understand that. I do. I think chat does too. Dude, in 2024, we're not doing that. No more hollow racial critiques. Racism is a divisive component of this conversation that basically gets these dumbass MAGA guys to be on board with whatever the fuck the white supremacist forces are advocating for. If you think 2025, if you think that I'm not familiar with how racial dynamics are factored into this equation, I don't know what to tell you. This is still, at the end of the day, a primarily class-based problem. You want to know why I know this is a class-based problem? Racism is just an additional component that makes the position of capital owners more marketable to the white working class. You want to know why I know this is a class problem? Because they used to make these arguments against other people that were not considered white, that are now obviously considered white. It's just depending on where these people are coming from, like the Irish, like the Italians, Polish people, Jewish people. Racism in this regard is simply a way to try and get broader subsects of the American labor force on board with arguments that actually harm them. This is literally the same situation for illegal Mexican immigrants on farms, right? Am I wrong? Basically, a workforce, you can work 4x the time for 25% of the pay for normal Americans, but because it's tech world and fancy sounding names, people don't associate them. Yes, you're absolutely correct, which is why I keep repeating that point over and over again. Wait till business owners, like small business owners that rely on undocumented labor, wait till those guys start feeling the pain of mass deportation. Following since 3 days ago, I think this person isn't aware that you talk about this constantly. I know. Racism in this regard is a way to drive a wedge between the working class, because the violence that is dished out upon black workers, brown workers alike, is dished out on a class basis. Unless you are talking about like individual acts of violence or the additional violence that comes from systemic racism, when we're talking about wage laborers, when we're talking about how wages work and why H-1B workers are seen as fantastic additions to the American workforce by these capital owners, it is because they have an extra component of vulnerability, and that is that they can get deported if they don't have their jobs. That means they are more readily available to work longer hours, for example. They can be brutalized and exploited further than the documented labor force can be, regardless of what their background is. It's that simple. Trying to drive a wedge into this conversation by being like, well, it's actually white supremacy. You're not talking about white supremacy. When white supremacy is an important component in this conversation, only when you're talking about how this attitude is marketed, or how the resentment is universalized by white working class racists who don't understand that they are being fucked over, when I'm literally trying to explain to people who might be in the margins of having these sorts of attitudes that they have the same exact interest that every other worker has all around the world. All you're doing is unnecessarily trying to bring the conversation back. You're unnecessarily trying to bring the conversation back to identity politics with a very hollow, very shallow conceptual understanding of identity politics. You are either willingly or unwillingly playing the role of a wrecker in this regard. Yeah, whites are attacking Indians for smelling bad because of their class, not their race. You're so dumb. I don't see color. Lefters. Yeah, whites are attacking Indians for smelling bad because of their class. Are you okay? Are we having a conversation about the white supremacist attitudes that many race people demonstrate towards Indians, or are we having a conversation about like what the capital owners' interests here are in terms of retaining H-1B visas as a structure and why that is so beneficial for your bosses? But yes, racism as a white supremacist attitudes and racism as a divisive component in regular political discourse is used in this regard. You're not wrong. Yes, white people are like, oh, Indians come from a different culture. They can't be a part of Western society. They smell bad. Yeah, that is unimaginably racist. The practical application of that kind of racism is so that people differentiate themselves from others who have the exact same class interests as they do in order to divide the working class and dominate them with ease. So yes, unless you personally, as a f***ing radlib, believe that people are just intrinsically tribalist and it's not learned behavior and they're ontologically evil due to their intrinsically tribalist nature, which, by the way, has no solution whatsoever to that problem. So I guess we just have to kill racist people, I guess. Like, I don't know how you want to approach the problem, how you would tackle this problem. Have to understand and contend with, yes, a materialist analysis of the issue. What the is this argument? You end up playing the role in the exact same way that racists do. Even though you're morally correct if you're anti-racist, ultimately you're serving the same exact purpose, which is the underlying assumption that like white people on the other side of the equation, who also are being destroyed by class dynamics, by class politics in general, who are victim to class violence, are actually the real enemies. I do not care about fucking bourgeois. I do not care about the capital owners. I want the American working class to be punished. That's your attitude. Talking out against racism equals radlib. I never said class is not important. Race is a very important factor too. No, you want this conversation to be dominated on the virtues of race and race alone. When I'm having a conversation about the class component, you want to bring it back to race. You want to simply talk about the individual racist acts that you see from dumbass racist people without having a broader conversation. This is the one time where I'm not directly talking about racism and tackling it head on. And you immediately go back, no, stop talking about class, only talk about race. While you are morally on the right side of this argument, if you are anti-racist, and it seems like you are, you're still serving the same purpose, diluting the conversation, trying to laser in on one component. And now that you were called out for this weird wrecker behavior, you go, talking out against racism equals radlib. I was simply talking out against racism. Yeah, because they're critiquing their race. No one cares about the H-1B visa holders from Europe because a lot of the H-1B visa holders overwhelmingly still come from China and India. This doesn't justify the racism that they experience. Also, this is incorrect as well. UK had to import a lot of Romanian laborers and Polish laborers. This was a big component as to why they wanted to leave the European Union. That's why Brexit happened. The overwhelming majority of the British working class were frustrated with the fact that there was a shit ton of Polish workers in the UK. So no, it literally, in that regard, wasn't because the Polish mind is servile and easy to dominate, and it's not up to standard with the unique high IQ British mentality. It was because they were like, what the fuck? They're taking the jobs. This man runs the identity politics like a Republican campaign manager. Yeah, it's so dumb because this is something that everyone in this community understands. Okay, racism is not only inappropriate, it's idiotic, it's wrong. Everybody understands this. All you're doing in this situation is basically going, racism is bad. Yeah, no shit, dude. Thanks for the brilliant take. I really, you changed my worldview in its entirety. Please stop talking about class dynamics and go back to race instantly. And then you also turn around and say, oh, this is just class reductionism. You're just being a annoying wrecker for no goddamn reason in a situation where the material reasons why people want H-1B visa workers in the eyes of the bosses is not because Indian workers are easier to dominate because a lot of people are white supremacist and anti-Indian, okay? That's not the reason. It's because of currency exchange rates, and also because, and more importantly, you'll get fucking deported if you lose your job. So you are easy to exploit. That's why I talked about whiteness as an ever-expanding concept early on, and do so pretty much every single fucking day, because if the broadest majority of like H-1B visa workers were coming from fucking Poland, then yes, I promise you, as is historically what has happened in American history towards the antagonism that Americans in the in-group have demonstrated towards the out-group, they would be anti-Polish, just like they were in the UK, just like they were in the United States of America. That's not exact same, but my tech company hires software engineers out of India instead. We are fully remote. Salaries are 1/3 the cost of a U.S. employee. Yes, that's what I'm saying. If the majority of H-1B was from Poland, we would not have this problem. You are wrong. You are absolutely wrong. If the overwhelming majority of H-1B visa workers were Polish, Americans absolutely would be busting out old-ass like anti-Polish sentiment in that they would accept the Polish. No, they wouldn't. And no, they haven't. They literally historically have not. So you're wrong. It took decades for Americans to adopt Polish people into the broader white in-group. What the f are you talking about? And I gave you an example from recent history where that literally was a major problem for the UK. This feels like the kind of derailer that's doing anything to get an out of context clip. I don't know. I just don't. It's like, it's a wonderful opportunity to cherish Republican infighting. But god damn it, do radlibs have radlibs will look at any gift that has been given to us in this community, where this is an opportunity for radicalization, for people to understand their class position. They will come in here and be like, no, you're fucking wrong. You simply don't understand how white supremacy works, and that white supremacist attitudes are intrinsic qualities that are unchangeable. There are two factions here: the populace who would hate Polish foreign workers too, and the white nationalists who openly admit they'd be fine with European immigrants filling these roles. Yeah, but white nationalists in the UK also hated the Polish workers. That's the point. Because whiteness is a socio-political construct that can expand or shrink. That's the point. Polish people historically have found themselves in the non-white category not that long ago. Look at Nazi Germany. Class reduction being used to justify racism is a real problem in many parts of the world. This ain't one of those instances. Exactly. It's also, I'm not even saying that like race doesn't matter at the end of the day, okay? Race does play a big role in this. Racism is the marketing component that universalizes and makes the capital owners aligned with the white working class that have these racist attitudes. It is historically a very effective way, especially in America, a white supremacist society with unexamined and resilient white supremacist aspects, has been the most significant way to rob everyone blind, okay? Don't make me bust out the Lee Atwater quote again, or the LBJ quote again. If you convince the lowest white man that he is still somehow higher than the highest black man, that you can rob him blind, hell, he'll open out his pockets for you.
There are a lot of labor shortages that are actually the biggest problem to growth, productivity, and really the future of the country. And that is going to require more immigration. It's always been America's benefit, value add, particularly compared to Europe or a lot of other places in the country. It's why we have had historically higher growth.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious, Congressman. I mean, why, I can never figure out, why is it that when on the right, some of these anti-immigrant folks talk about this, they're not also talking about what it actually is going to take to bring American workers to these jobs, right? Whether it's raising their skills.
I think the idea that like there is a labor shortage of skilled American workers in these fields is also incorrect, especially when like Elon Musk himself did this. Okay. What did he do? He bought Twitter. He was forced into buying Twitter from a Delaware court. Obviously, he didn't want to fucking buy Twitter at the price point that he was buying it at, but he was forced to buy Twitter. And what did he do? He immediately fired every fucking person that works at Twitter that wasn't an H-1B visa holder. Now, the product sucked as a direct consequence of that. It's barely working with a skeleton crew. But why did he do that? He did that because it's not that H-1B visa workers are significantly better at their jobs than like American workers are. He did that because those guys have to keep their jobs in order not to be deported. It's that simple. There isn't a massive shortage of comp sci engineers in the United States of America. As a matter of fact, many of them are in here right now, probably delivering Uber Eats at this very moment because they got laid off from the jobs that they were at. So that in and of itself is another aspect of this issue as well.
Yes, we need to secure the border. We need to stop the massive influx of illegal immigration. But the fact is we have a population decline in this country and we have a workforce shortage. We have a shortage of doctors, nurses, engineers, home health aides, ag workers, construction workers, hospitality workers. We need to not only have an...
We don't. We have a shortage in one very important component. We have a shortage in wages. There's a pay shortage, there's a benefit shortage, and that's it. This is another way of trying to do the nobody wants to work anymore attitude.
But we need an education system that is ensuring that we are building the workforce that we need. It's not just about having a pipeline to college. We need a pipeline to the jobs that need to be filled, which means our K through 12 system needs to be reevaluated.
Yeah, when Lawler says this, by the way, as a Republican, he means we need to privatize education further, driving an even larger wedge between the broadest subsects of American society that don't have the finances to be able to send their children to private school. Just so you understand, these people want to make K through 12 education the exact same way that college works in this country. And then they complain, they have the audacity to complain about college education being so costly in this country and how you should just abandon it altogether. So what do you do in that situation? Are you going to abandon K through 12 education altogether as well?
Okay, so here's his post. He says, the reason top tech companies often hire foreign-born and first-generation engineers over Native Americans isn't because of an innate American IQ deficit, a lazy, wrong explanation. A key part of it comes down to the C word, culture, a culture that celebrates the prom queen over the math Olympiad champ or the jock over the valedictorian will not produce the best engineers. Sounds a little embittered, maybe. Is it American culture that's the problem?
Somebody got stuffed in a locker. I'm not going to say who. Look, I think there's a way to solve this and talk about this that doesn't denigrate all of American culture. I mean, I'm now understanding more and more how he got 100 votes in Iowa or whatever it was he got during the Iowa caucus. So I think we can bring in the absolute top talent from around the world, and at the same time, not insult the rest of the United States of America and our culture and the way we do things here, and also lift up the American students who have the talent and who have the interest and put them in the right educational opportunities. I think what he did today was to overtalk it. A lot of MAGA people are not happy. A lot of Republicans are not happy, and this is why Donald Trump's in the Oval Office, and he's
saying
a
something
volunteer.
that a lot of people apparently believe, that it's about like the jocks being celebrated, the football stars being celebrated, and not the nerds.
It also challenges, actually raises the idea that many immigrant families have when they come to the United States.
This is when you arrive at the cutting edge of the inherent contradictions baked into capitalism. The interests of the working class versus the interests of capital owners. If you consistently try to liberal your way out of this problem, you're going to be like, oh, it's a cultural difference. That's why Indians have like a higher, a better culture surrounding nerdy shit. That's it. You've maxed out at that point. And that cultural attitude is usually just a substitute for race anyway. If you build it, people will come. If you give better wage, if you offer better wages to people, they will go to those sectors. They will work in those sectors.